At that point in time, we already know how to measure with simplifications the benefits of debt financing. And that means we can proceed to dynamic trade-off theory or conception of capital structure. Let's explain with this graph. If we just pick up two very similar companies in terms of their operations, they are producing similar products, they are competing in similar markets, and they have almost the similar size and operational policy, but they will differ, these companies, by their financing policy. So if we can now assume that we somehow can understand the value and measure the value of the company which does not apply any financial leverage, this would be value with the symbol U. The value of unlevered company, this is the discounted cash flow at some rate which expresses operational risk of that company. On opposite, the company which differs by the financing policy, which at that point of our discussion applies financial leverage for the long-term period to follow its strategy, but it's the same with a similar operational profile. The value of that company can also be understood at first by comparing it to the value of unlevered company. But because of the tax shield or cash flow stream, which will last forever with our simplifications, which will still be kept by the company, they are not paid out in income tax, and these are additional cash flows lasting forever in very equal installments year by year. They are kept within the company, and we already expressed the value of all these equal tax shields going forever. So we have to add now that value of a tax shield to the value of unlevered company, because the value of unlevered company also only captures the cash flows which are due to the operations of the company. And because that company, which is unlevered, does not have any debt in a capital structure, it does not pay any interest or coupon expense, and that's why it does not have any tax shield due to this specific financing policy. And then the graph can show us that comparison, that the value of the company which is levered will be higher than the value of the company which is unlevered. And the higher than the debt-to-equity ratio, which is the expression for the financial leverage of the levered company, the higher would be the value of a tax shield which lasts forever with our simplifications. But at some point in time, of course, when debt-to-equity ratio raises significantly, it may happen that company which is applying financial leverage will incur the costs of debt financing. And there will appear the cost of financial distress. And somehow we need to understand a little bit later how we are going to measure the value of the cost of financial distress. But that equation now, even with these simplifications, captures very important point behind the trade-off theory. So it says, when you are applying debt financing, you will at first get some benefits. If you continue increasing your financial leverage, your benefits will also increase. So you will get your marginal benefits because you continue increasing your financial leverage. But with each step in increase in financial leverage, you will incur additional costs of financial distress. This would be marginal costs of financial distress. So going step by step, you have to balance your marginal benefits and your marginal costs. Your marginal benefits, this is the plus to the value of levered company. Your marginal costs, this is a deduction from the value of the levered company. Moving forward, we need to summarize the principles of trade-off argumentation or explanation of capital structure choice. So we already said that the marginal benefits may increase because they are due to the tax shield streams. We already said that the marginal costs will increase if the company is increasing debt to equity ratio. So we need to understand that these marginal costs could be related to the so-called misfortunes for business operations, to the threat of potential future bankruptcy. And that's why the company which applies debt in its capital structure decision should be really very cautious. So the trade-off conception explains the power of cost of financial distress and the benefits and the value additions due to the tax shield. And it says that the motivation behind capital structure choice for some companies could be just find this proper balance between the marginal cost and marginal benefits of debt financing. Stu Myers summarized several principles as well as some discussion points in trade-off conception behind capital structure decisions. And here at that slide, I'm showing this very interesting points. They are called discussion points just because you need to verify this with different samples for different periods in time. You will find very different answers because not every company maybe is following that particular logic of capital structure decisions. But if the company follows that logic, according to the trade-off conception, it says first that then the company should set up a target debt-to-value ratio or a target financial leverage or a target capital structure for itself. And then after setting up that target level of capital structure, every company which follows that motivation behind long-term financing policy will gradually move towards the target capital structure. Second very important point to be discussed, but that target capital structure level is not very easy or directly observable. It is a bit uncertain because target capital structure also depends on some balance of benefits and costs. And when competing in the actual market, but without this very simplistic assumptions we already introduced several minutes ago, we need to say that the target capital structure, of course, may vary in the nearest future. So you need to be very attentively observing what's going to happen, what are the determinants of your target capital structure, and what is the interaction between those determinants according to the changes and the shifts in the competition in your product market, intensity of that competition. So the balance of benefits and costs on particular level of the target capital structure may also change. And finally, according to the trade-off conception, if you have that target already set up, you just step by step gradually are moving towards the target capital structure due to the transaction costs, because it's not a costless operation just to get the new level of a capital structure. You need some additional transactions. And that's why the discussion point also will concern the different adjustment parts. May it happen that when moving gradually to your target capital structure, you will bear just permanent costs each year, step by step, or it's going to be just one-time upfront costs. It depends on the sample. It depends on the technique of the empirical research. Some researchers will say, yes, there would be some permanent costs. In some other papers, we can come to the conclusion, no, this would be just on-time, upfront, one-time costs. And the second discussable point is whether these transaction costs are dependent on the amount of the debt you need to change, increase or decrease to get to your target capital structure. And that's why we can say maybe the transaction costs are going to be fixed, or they are variable costs because they are dependent on the amount of debt you need to add or you need to repay just to be closer to your target and capital structure. So let's summarize the principles of the dynamic trade-off conception. So the company is going to find that balance between marginal benefits and marginal costs within several periods. And that's why within this long-term period, the company moves steadily to the target financial leverage. And it is doing this way on a systematic basis, which means that the company financial managers should be very carefully watching the determinants of the target financial leverage, because it will vary in the nearest future. Then it's also very important to say that the financial leverage is going to be changed somehow, and you need to explain all these changes and foresee these potential changes in the future. And finally, each company will have some speed of adjustment to that target level of capital structure, which moves or drifts itself somehow under the impact of some particular determinants. And that's why we can also assume that the mean reversion effect that we already mentioned at the very beginning of our class could be, or even should be, described by the trade-off conception. How about the model and the solutions for the model? And I'm going to refer to a very important paper written by Goldstein et al. And by Fisher et al., two different but very interesting papers on the dynamic trade-off. What is the summary from these interesting conceptual papers? So the drifts in the capital structure would be observable, and the delays in adjustment to the target capital structure will be also observable due to the difference in transaction costs. Next very important point: even in case the transaction costs at some particular period are not high, they are even low, it will result in the deviations from the prescribed, predetermined target capital structure. And if the leverage gets too far from the target level, then the company should undertake the rebalancing, and it would be discrete action when the company is rebalancing the capital structure, moving towards the target level. And according to these conceptions, there should be some minimum and maximum boundaries when the company is starting rebalancing. So only when the company reaches the lower limit or the upper limit in this range for the target capital structure, then the rebalancing arrives. And when it comes to the rebalancing, if the company earns enough profit, then the company is going to repay the debt, and then the leverage will decrease. When the leverage comes to the lower limit, then the company should recapitalize or attract additional capital. The company may attract additional debt at that point in time. If the debt increases, then the company permits to drift towards the new level of a target capital structure until it reaches the so-called upper limit. And the transaction costs which company will incur when moving towards the target capital structure and drifting towards the target capital structure, those transaction costs will delay that rebalancing and lead to a wider variations in the level of the leverage around the target capital structure. And the greater the volatility of the business of any particular company which follows that logic of financing, the higher would be the range in which the company permits those drifts between the upper and lower limits in the deviations from the target level of the capital structure. And even the greater the volatility of the company's business in its product market, the higher could be the impact on the target capital structure itself. And according to this model, greater volatility can lead to the reduction of a target level of a capital structure when the boundaries are already reached. So the company which suffer from that greater or increased volatility in its operation will set up new target capital structure at some lower levels than it was done before. And finally, which is really very important, the empirical data which followed that approach in dynamic trade-off reflected the drifts in capital structure rather than some very active rebalancing, which the huge shifts in the level of the financial leverage. And following those principles according to this model of dynamic trade-off, we then can say that the capital structure which exhibits the mean reversion on the national level really can be explained by the trade-off conception at a firm level as well. Due to these adjustments to the target capital structure, due to these drifts to the target capital structure, due to the impact of the competition and the volatility on the target level itself and on the range between the lower and upper limits in the deviations from the target capital structure. Some researchers can show, and they really showed, and they really concluded that the adjustments could be also fast. About 2 to 3 years it may take to adjust to some predetermined target level of capital structure. But what is really interesting, the speed of adjustment may really differ between the companies which are paying regular cash dividends to their shareholders and those which are non-payers. According to the research of Fama-French, we can now see here on that slide that those which are not paying, their speed of adjustment is 10 to 15 percentage points higher. Those who are paying the dividends to their shareholders, they will have the lower levels of the adjustments to the target capital structure.